And welcome to the Daily Space Weather. We see the sunspot 2748 degrading. We're going to talk solar polar fields. We're going to talk things like trends, recessions, and all kinds of other stuff. So we better get to it here, as there is a lot of stuff to cover. We're looking at the sun in 171 angstroms here. And we see that sunspot front and center, 2748. It is degrading. It has been downgraded to an alpha class. There are some filamentary areas that are rising here towards stereo A. And let's look at another view. Here's 193 angstroms. We see a diffuse coronal hole there, almost due south of that sunspot. And we see the North Pole coronal hole giant. And the South Pole coronal hole is looking shrunken. We did see the North Pole solar polar field increase in strength and then decrease in strength, becoming a gaping coronal hole once again. And we're going to talk about that at the end, so stay tuned. Again, a lot of stuff to cover today as the geomagnetic storm finally ceases. Before we look at more data, let's consider supporting the channel via Patreon, via becoming a patron on Patreon, that is, and that is our main source of revenue, as YouTube pays us nothing for these videos, so check the links in the description of that. Become our latest patron. Or if you prefer to donate anonymously through PayPal, or if you want to be on a credits crawl, please send an email, smashomash@gmail.com. We will create a credit call if you're a contributor, a donor. Also check out the Hemp Lucid Spaced Out campaign, specifically formulated for our spaced out viewers. Also links in the description to that, the Hemp Lucid Spaced Out campaign. If you're in the market for CBDs, please buy them via our links. And let's look at some more data here, like the real-time solar wind, which has calmed down a bit. It's still nearly 600 kilometers per second speed, but the density has come all the way down to 0.89 protons per cubic centimeter. Less than 1 proton per cubic centimeter, folks. It's very diffuse. And we see a phi angle hovering around 180 degrees. Looks like a magnetic connection to that coronal hole as it comes right into the Earth-facing region. And there's the data from the ACE spacecraft. A spacecraft a little better shielded, but not quite as sensitive as the more modern Discover, if you were wondering. 10.7 centimeter radial flux has come up to 69. Still above predicted values, but still like a solar minimum type condition. So here's the sunspot analysis, the 4-pane image here, courtesy solarham.net. And we see these umbra are actually spreading out. It looks like one is rotating at a different speed from the other one. The leading umbra getting farther away from the trailing umbra. And if I had to guess, I'd say we're going to see a B-class X-ray flare today, right as this thing evaporates. So it's entirely possible. They've raised the probability of a C-class flare to 5%. Wouldn't be surprised at all to see a B-class flare as these things disconnect from each other. There's probably going to be some sort of a plasma disconnect, reconnect scenario going on throughout the day today. So watch the GOES X-ray flux. Again, the geomagnetic storm conditions have waned, and we see a very low solar wind density here. Shrink that down one level. There we go. And there's that solar wind density, 4 hours worth. For your new viewers, low density is noted in white on here, high density in blue. And I meant to press page down. There's the pressure. And we see the majority of the pressure is on the magnetotail side here, the non-sun facing portion. And there's that data. Moving on to the ground geospace magnetic perturbations. As the South Pole creeps into the Indian Ocean, and the two North Poles create a net pole around Svalbard. But there really are 2 North Poles, folks. It might sound weird, but it's true. And after seeing the better part of 3 days here with a significant geomagnetic storm and unrest condition, the Earth has rested back into a KP of 3, which is really an optimal condition, folks. I mean, not a geomagnetic storm, not unrest, and not a particularly cosmic ray deadly environment there, so that's what you want to see. And let's move on to more data, such as the ionosphere movie. And there's the animation of that, complete with timestamps. We'll let that play through twice, and then we will load the latest image. Which is going to be around 9 o'clock UT, and looking pretty normal on both the day and nighttime side there. Again, I would forecast a B-class X-ray flare today, just before the sunspot evaporates, which it is set to do also. As those two fields get farther apart, the actual probability of a large flare goes down, but there's surely some magnetic roping going on between those, and there's a necessity of a disconnect effect happening here. So some plasma is probably going to rain back down on the corona, or onto the photosphere, we'll say. And yeah, so perhaps look at this throughout the day, again, expecting a B-class flare. Patrons will get a sudden update if we see any kind of X-ray flares. Electron flux probably going to soar throughout the day today, so keep an eye on that. We're expecting this to not dip down particularly much at all, increasing GPS errors, especially around the equator. If you've ever checked out theplanetstoday.com, we show this every day, and we advance it 1 week. I just wanted to show everybody the geocentric view also here, as it will show you which planets are where. It'll draw these nice lines for you to show this geocentric view, as I know a lot of folks are interested in that. Now we'll go back to the diagrammatic view here, and we'll advance this 1 week as we do most days on the space weather videos. And there are the location of our local objects. Milky Way Galaxy team for the win. Now the sunspot will show up on the X-ray imager despite not having any significant X-ray flares. And there you can see sunspot 2748 in X-ray, thanks to the GOES 14. Let's see other things, as there is still a lot of stuff to cover. GOES magnetometer. There's the action there. Keep in mind, sunspots hold back solar magnetism in many ways. And let's move on to the Gong 2. There's the Gong 2 data. This is 1 hour, 35 minutes old, and keep in mind the magnetic environment can change with zero warning, folks. Zero warning. We're going to talk hurricanes momentarily. And here's what's going on in the current heliospheric current sheet environment, magnetically speaking. Welcome to the remaining North Pole portion of the current sheet, shown in green. And again, we are going to talk solar polar fields at the end of the video, so don't go anywhere. As we run ultra late, here's where stuff is above my head, and we have no time to spend on this. If you want to make a sky chart for yourself, check out in-the-sky.org. Last 24 hours of earthquakes are as follows. This one about 23 hours ago. A 5.0 in Indonesia. That one's at depth. Heads up northern Australia. There could be a large quake at the surface there, causing a tsunami possibility. Here's an odd one, a 5.2 north of Svalbard. Here's a 4.3 at Turkey, north of Saudi Arabia, it looks like. 5.0 at Peru. As we've been warning Western South America for weeks, especially at that little corner there, that little concave corner on the on the western coast of South America there. Another deep quake at Fiji, as we saw, I believe it was 2 600-plus kilometer deep quakes there in between Fiji and Tonga. 4.9 at Argentina. That one also at depth. As that coronal hole connects, folks, the earthquake risk does not go away. Solar minimum conditions can persist. as coronal holes are signs of weak activity from our perspective. 5.9 at the north mid-Atlantic ridge. Used to be an odd place for quakes, and now we see about one every week. 4.9 at Taiwan. Let's check out the location of that one. Very close to the beach. Please leave a comment if you experienced that quake. Or any quake for that matter. How about a 4.3 at Mexico? And by the way, thanks everybody who leaves comments. We read every one. We can't respond to everyone, but we do read them all. 4.3 at Greece. You see a 4.7 at Alaska. That one near the mainland portion of the Aleutian Islands, a 4.9 at the South Pacific Ocean. Pretty much in the middle of nowhere. Let's check the location of that one. Is there a mysterious rift? Is there a seamount? Is there a heap and help and a nothing? Man, oh man, that's a desolate area, right? Jeez. The closest place is Papeete, French Polynesia. That sounds like a hell of a vacation spot. What do you think? And here's the windy.com pressure map. The situation now is, as we forecasted days ago, that this hurricane is loitering over the Bahamas. It's being held in place by a bunch of dry, massive air. And if you don't understand atmospheric physics, and you argue with us about things like geoengineering because you don't understand atmospheric physics, then we invite you to leave a comment. And again, we may not answer, but we'll leave a comment anyway. Let's advance this. This is the GFS model loaded here on windy.com. As this is expected on the same path as it was 2 days ago. Now, a million YouTube channels and a million news organizations are going to try to update you every 5 seconds. Most of those updates are going to be about how there's no update. We're going to go to Tropical Tidbits in a minute after we visually look at this on the water vapor and the shortwave radiation satellite. Anyway, still expected to make landfall around Thursday on South Carolina. There is going to be beach erosion and storm surge all along this area, as well as high winds. So despite not making landfall, it's still going to damage beaches and cause lots of evacuations. We've got roads where they've got both lanes going in one direction to facilitate evacuations, as well as toll booths turned off. And if you're in one of these zones, please just follow the instructions of your local government or your local whoever, your local emergency whatever personnel, because if you get stranded, they'll be the ones to have to save you, folks. And if you're wondering when the cavalry is going to arrive, it's probably because you're the cavalry. And here's the National Weather Service map. You can see all kinds of warnings, tropical storm warnings, hurricane warnings, etc. Again, you're going to see beach erosion, all kinds of flooding. And if the forecast is that there's going to be 6 foot of water in your living room, don't be in your living room. I mean, it's pretty simple. If you need information, just go to weather.gov. That's weather.gov and click on your location. If you're interested in what's going on above your head, as I usually am, you'd be very interested to know about lightning strikes, I would imagine. Now, Minnesota got some lightning strikes last night, as there was a confirmed tornado. But let's look at the area around the Bahamas. Looks like all the lightning is on the southern portion of Hurricane Dorian right now, as this thing is spinning storms off, and there is a lot of destruction going on. At least 5 dead in the Bahamas, with claims of a 20-foot plus storm surge. Didn't have your dose of disasters yet? How about a volcano rundown? Shivaluch still exploding and producing an 18,000-foot ash plume. Mount Aso, 6,000-foot ash plume there. Sakurajima back on the list, 6,000-foot ash plume there. Sanjiangapi exploding, 10,000-foot ash plume there. Tokono exploding, 7,000-foot ash plume there. Popocatépetl exploding, 20,000-foot ash plume there. Sangay exploding, 20,000 foot ash plume there. Revenador exploding. 16,000 foot ash plume there. Do you think this will contribute to global cooling, folks? Have you read about carbonyl sulfide yet? I guess we should probably cover it in one of the videos. What do you think, Howard? Please leave a comment. We'll pin it. Revenador, 16,000 foot ash plume. Sabancaya exploding, 26,000 foot ash plume. Nevados de Chilean, still a bad place to do a handspring over the caldera as it's producing a 14,000 foot ash plume, and that would have to be a pretty big handspring. Speaking of people that can do pretty big handsprings, are you familiar with theveloshop.net? No? All right. Please leave a comment if you like this hat better than the one yesterday. Let's just say I wear many hats, folks. Many hats. And here's Hurricane Dorian from the jet stream view. By the way, this hurricane has weakened to a Category 3. Although there is some potential that this thing could turn back on a bit now. Now, I predicted that this would weaken due to the surrounding of dry air. This is the reason it's going to be making a turn to its right and the northeast. And that's because there's no place else for it to go, folks. The jet stream is forcing this thing to make this turn. And there's a bunch of dry massive air there that's going to weaken it. We saw dry air inside the eye wall yesterday. Always a sign of a weakening, wobbly wall. However, as this thing goes north, there's going to be some warm water patches to the north of it due to the Gulf Stream and some other factors there, just convective forces. So this is doing exactly what I predicted 2 days ago, if you were wondering. I mean, I don't know. I'm not listening to what the Weather Channel says because I look at the data and I could care less what forecasters say. If you understand the physics, you understand the physics. And trying to predict weather is pretty elementary at that point, folks. Jet stream in the northern hemisphere is extremely meridional in nature. We're looking at the western world here. Southern jet stream is extremely powerful in nature. As the Cape of Good Hope continues to get hammered by straight up Antarctican air. Check that out. Straight out of Antarctica, right into South America. I mean, that's serious. Jeez. Meridional jet stream flow at its finest. Let's zoom back out and look at the eastern jets. And there you have it. Extremely convective forces in the northern hemisphere governing the behavior of the jet stream, and the southern hemisphere all kinds of doubled up and meridional in nature. And here's AccuWeather's Doppler radar. Here's the system that kicked off a deadly, maybe not deadly, but a potentially deadly tornado in Minnesota last night. If you are in the way of this system here, especially the northwest corner of it, but that's a big nasty system, folks. Please have your kayaks and your hard hats ready, as that's going to be please don't be out on Lake Superior or Lake Huron or Lake Michigan while those storms come through, as these lakes are able to funnel pressure and create some incredibly dangerous situations. Leave a comment if you've ever been on the Great Lakes, as I have. And man, storms like this, put it this way, the Great Lakes Triangle is much, much deadlier than the Bermuda Triangle. Again, Dorian's been downgraded to a Cat 3. However, it's completely stalling over the Bahamas and causing historic destruction. So this is loitering just as we stated it would 2 days ago. And it's all because of the influence of the dry massive air in the jet stream. Watch Tropical Tidbits' videos about this. That guy also knows what he's talking about. Anyway, there's all kinds of evacuations happening. Again, please keep track of your local updates for your area, as when you are forecasting what's going on in space, it's pretty hard to forecast what's going on in Palm Beach County, as I really have no idea where that is. And here's Dorian. You can see that the eye is weakened. It's not very organized in there anymore, and that's because that dry air that we viewed yesterday got integrated. And when I say integrated, I mean it broke some moisture apart, and it caused some downwelling and so on. Anyway, there's the view in the NASA GOES interactive shortwave radiation map. Let's take a look at the water vapor scenario. And here's the zoomed out view. Apparently there's a super star destroyer going over the US, or perhaps the Borg mothership. I'm not exactly sure about that. Anyway, there's a zoomed out view, and you can see this high pressure ridge here. This is what this stall is being caused by. There is a little bit of compression being created there too, but it's not a particularly advantageous situation for this thing to make landfall, and that's why it's going to just cruise up the coast. And in fact, the storm track, we're expecting it to be going slightly to the east now. Let's zoom in on the close-up water vapor map. And there's the full zoom, complete with timestamps. Actually, let's get a little north of that. And there you can see that high pressure ridge, that dry mass of air that's right off the coast, and that is going to be the saving grace to places like, well, indeed, Florida, but also Georgia, South Carolina, North Carolina. You're still going to be looking at 20 plus inches of rain, and we're going to show you the tropical tidbit map in a minute, as we don't want this video to be too long, and it's getting very late, so we got to move on. There's the final run. And for those of you who understand atmospheric physics, we're going to actually do a cosmic ray section here. We're just going to do a quick rundown. Here's Apatity. There's Barentsburg. And when I say do you understand cosmic rays, I mean these things are completely attenuating cloud nucleation, folks. And it's one of the many reasons why we get worse weather conditions at solar minima. Here's the Athens cosmic ray station. There's Mexico City. There's Moscow. And here are Oulu and Antarctica. First Oulu, DOMC Antarctica, and DOMB Antarctica. It must be too cold there to return data, folks. Let's hope it's not destroyed. And here's Tropical Tidbits. We're looking at Saturday, September 7th at midnight, as that's the moment when we're expecting this thing to be off the coast of New Jersey, this tropical low. By then it'll just be a low pressure system, most assuredly. And here's the way it will progress. Let's go to 6 Zulu, which is about 2 hours ago when this was recorded. And the heavy rains are expected to start near the South Carolina-Georgia coastal border there around 18 Zulu tomorrow. So you got about 36 hours before the heavy rains start to hit, and then it's just going to inundate coastal South Carolina, inundate coastal North Carolina and Virginia. It's going to cause ridiculous amounts of damage in that entire area. You're looking at 20 inches of rain there. If you're told to evacuate, please evacuate. And due to time constraints, we're going to have to integrate the "that is censored" and "that is a hole in the ground" section, as we like our viewers to understand the distinction between a lot of things like real search engines and Google, real grassroots anything, and the way YouTube works, censorship and free speech, open source versus junkware. Or you could call it spyware. Spyware, junkware, malware, Google, Facebook, Twitter, transcribe that. Do you follow us on other social media like Facebook? Or perhaps on Instagram? We're also on Twitter, making it easier for you to share our videos with your friends, as we know some folks only use Twitter as their only social media. So share our videos there, how about? We're also on Gab, as well as on Minds, the open source future of social media. Check out our thumbnails from yesterday. Again, become our next patron and get our updates faster than anybody else on the internet. Also, watch our video from yesterday, Censored versus Sinkhole, as we talk about things like hardening the U.S. power grid. If you're worried about building a wall, and you're worried about prepping, and you enjoy my boonie hat selections, watch the videos. So, as DARPA is concerned about people like Kim Jong-un detonating nuclear weapons and causing EMPs on purpose, Like and subscribe to the YouTube channel, as most of our content is there. And thanks, smAsho team. Please stay tuned, folks, as the video ain't over yet. We've got bonus sections. Dow futures expected to fall more than 200 points after new idiotic tariffs take effect. So right as we're having global food shortages, we've got two governments acting like petulant children, imposing tariffs, which is a raising of your taxes, folks. If you think China pays the tariffs imposed on China, well, I hope you're super rich, because if not, you're going to notice in the next year as food prices rise, inflation rises. And when we say inflation, we don't mean prices. Prices are prices. Inflation is a devaluation of your dollars, the ultimate tax imposed on you via things like government sovereignty and legal tender laws. Anyway, Dow futures set to tumble more than 200 points as new tariffs go into effect. Also, Brexit uncertainty, and there's some earnings coming out this week, so people are already worried about earnings, but the main thing is the tariffs. And when I say tariffs, I'm talking about a tax imposed on you, the viewer, the citizens, because when companies are forced to raise prices, guess what that does to your bottom line, consumer? We'll leave links to this article also about lists of recession signals that are flashing red, such as inverted bond yields, GDP growth, corporate profits, tariffs, food shortages, manufacturing contractions. Be prepared, folks. Your prices are going to go up. Although if you're an electrician, it would be a good time to invest in some copper, as copper is super expensive and ridiculously low in price right now. Maybe sell your gold, buy some copper, just saying. That's not officially investment advice, folks, as I am not currently licensed to give you any. Let's talk about government overreach. We'll talk about another quote from Democrat presidential candidate Bernie Sanders. Now, this is an old quote. This is years old. He said he'll not wait for Congress to act. He'll take executive action to accomplish what Congress has failed to do and build upon President Obama's executive orders. Which orders? The ones to not enforce immigration laws. Why? Because Democrats try to buy votes by creating an open border situation. So just another example of Bernie's overreach and desire to do things utterly inappropriate for the government to do, such as being involved in matters economic and imposing tariffs. See what I'm saying there? See what I'm saying? Let's talk about the way the sausage gets made. And when I say sausage, I mean a bunch of crap. A bunch of crap in a meat tube. Actually, I like sausage, but what I don't like is Google. So check this out. If you want to figure out how the sausage is made, check out trends.google.com. And if you can wade through a bunch of ridiculously horrible software written by people that know less about code than one flake of my dander, then by all means, check it out. But you will get information about who's searching for what. And it is a foray into human stupidity to look at what's trending on Google. Oh, Justin Bieber. Oh, Brexit. Oh, India has Apache helicopters. Oh, Notre Dame football. We've got links to this article in the description also about the Minnesota tornado that happened last night. Hoping everybody is okay up there, as it was a bad evening, storm-wise, as these storms continue to roll over the Great Lakes region. How about an alternative? How about DuckDuckGo.com? How about a company that won't track you? How about a company that will return objective search results? Check it out. They're only 10 years old. Actually 11, I guess. They started in 2008. And turns out they're hiring, folks. If you'd like a job in the real tech, don't try to work for Google and Facebook, because they're writing junkware 24/7. And all I can say is in the 80s, 90s, and even in the 2000s, we used to write this stuff called code that worked. So seriously, check out DuckDuckGo. Get objective search results. They won't store your information. They won't follow you around with ads and annoy the hell out of you and cause your browser to run more slowly. They won't even track you when you're not in private browsing mode. How do you like them apples? DuckDuckGo.com, objective search results instead of biased nonsense via Google junkware. Because Google's not a verb, folks. It's a scam. Let's talk polar fields, solar polar fields. For those of you who understand the actual way that the solar cycles progress, you'll understand that the polar fields and the reversal of the polar fields and so on is the driver behind that stuff. Now, we've seen a recent change in the solar polar fields. Links to this article, first of all. We've got up-to-date butterfly diagrams, as you can see here. We do some of the research, so some of you don't have to. We've also linked this one here, polar field strength versus time. And this is from January 1st, 1975 through the end of the year this year. So that is another good thing to be looking at if you're interested in the way the solar cycles actually progress, as opposed to the fiction nonsense that is all over the internet about the way the solar cycles progress. Now, here's the really important graph. Let me zoom in on this. Now, you can see a precipitous rise in the power of the solar North Pole right here, and then a precipitous drop in the North Pole. Let me migrate. You see that? That's a serious indication right there. Let's look at the key. That's the North Pole. Notice the way the coronal hole has grown? Allow me to show you. Before I do show you, I'm going to show you one more link here to Lockheed Martin's Solar Astrophysics Laboratory. We're just going to link you to this as they're looking at some data that you may not otherwise be looking at. We can't show you everything in one video, so there's another link for you to explore. Now let's look at those coronal holes. Now, what do we know about coronal holes, folks? They're more common at solar minimum than solar maximum. We did watch this North Pole coronal hole shrink on our channel over a period of weeks and months, but now it's grown back up, an indication that the North Pole solar polar field has gone back to a weak state. So we were watching it increase in power and thinking that that's a good sign. Well, seeing this coronal hole grow huge again is a bad sign. Anyway, here's the same run here. This is 8.5 hours and 94 angstroms. And you can see that coronal hole is super defined. Now the South Pole has been pretty steady here. But the North Pole has fluctuated in an odd way that pretty much nobody was expecting. So that's it. We've got links to everything in the description below the video, folks. Please check those out. Please support the channel. Please share on your social media if possible. Maybe get yourself shadow banned. Maybe get yourself deplatformed or something like that. It's really fun. It's fun. And, you know, who needs the government to censor you when big tech will do that for free? So we're out of here, folks. Remember, when you're staring at the sun, don't drink. And if you drink, stare at the sun anyway. Just don't drive. Seriously, don't drive. And since it'll never be now again, may the solar wind be at your back and the atherosclerosis absent from your veins.